And I think I would tell her to just keep saying yes to stuff. It might seem sort of odd. It might seem out of your depth or out of the scope of what you're doing or trying to build and create. But I would encourage her and anybody to just truly be like, yes, sure, why not?
I appreciate you jumping on here. This is awesome to get you on here. We're linked on LinkedIn. And I saw a post that you posted a couple weeks ago about 10 years in content, in broadcast media, all this. And it was awesome. I was like, this is genuinely like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And then I went in and checked your LinkedIn and like checked all you've done. And I was like, I got to bring Katie on to see what her career's been like in this last 10 years. Because the post was beautiful. And I was like, I need to see what's going on over there. So that's the reason why I brought you on. But I'm happy to have you. How you doing?
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm great. And that means a lot. I think sometimes you just sort of throw stuff on LinkedIn and hope it resonates somewhere, or you do it for yourself as sort of like a benchmark of time and a conflict. I don't know. And so to hear that is lovely. Thank you. You never know if it hits, but I'm doing okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been 10 years of kind of an interesting intersection of broadcasting and live events, comedy, tech, sports, children's programming. I've definitely had people sort of look at my resume and be like, what is going on here? So things are good. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. It's exciting to have you. And obviously the first thing we could do is just throw it all the way back and kind of figure out what that is. I think there's trying to find the niche for this particular podcast. I'm not sure I have one, but I would say like the creative process and people finding their path in a creative way is to me the most interesting part about people.
Cool.
If they're in content or in, whatever it might be, broadcasting. So I'm curious, at what point did you decide I kind of actually like this? Like this being a part of, content creation, production, the process.
Yeah.
Because it's not just on camera. Like anybody can sit on camera, you got your broadcasters on the camera side, but you're on the other side and you're helping things go. What made you love that?
Yeah. I think the community and the camaraderie associated with it, even going all the way back to college. I worked on a morning news show with a bunch of broadcast majors, and we were sort of obsessed with this thing that we didn't do for college credit. We didn't get paid for. We just sort of were nerds. It's the best way in the best way of like just loving putting stuff out there. Like there was no reason we needed to essentially ambulance chase in our college town. It was just sort of like a natural curiosity, and also sharing the love of that with some of your favorite people who I'm still really close to today. And I think the creative tie and that through line through all of it is just the ability to express yourself in different ways or inform people or just kind of have fun while working on a finished product, while working on something you can point to and be like, a podcast, a show, whatever it is, in a way that I think is just really fulfilling. So much so that we gave up a good portion of like a traditional college experience for it. And it would do it the same way again in a heartbeat.
Awesome. So when you went to college, did you know that this is what you wanted to do, or did you find that at college?
Yeah. I did. I went to Elon University
Okay.
for their communications program, sort of knowing that was in the mix, but didn't know specifically sort of what the interest was, where I was going to land. Started out in hard news, kind of shoe leather broadcast journalism, and quickly realized I probably don't have the stomach for it. Was not willing to push people, was not willing to ask tough questions. They sent me into the deep end a couple times, and I was like, oh no, absolutely not. Like, no. So started the morning show as kind of a result of that, and found a lot of other people who liked informative content, but maybe not the hard hitting stuff. And so that was a little bit of news, a little bit of weather, sports, your typical, but also puppies and cooking segments. And it could kind of be that intersection in a way that I think scratched that itch for a lot of us, but also didn't necessarily put us in a situation we didn't want to be in. So all the way back to freshman year of college and still here, which is wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, obviously, your resume speaks for itself, but yeah, just I know that feeling of like being put in a spot where you're like, I don't even know that this is trying to ask these questions and making the room uncomfortable because of what you asked. Probably not the best thing. That feeling right there. It's not a feeling you'd like to chase, I would imagine.
No, very quickly realized I was like, I got to get out of this. And there was plenty other stuff to do, right? Like, I think especially being scrappy with a college broadcast network, in a small town, like our set, we pulled from backing up someone's pickup truck to a living room and loading them into the, like you cobbled together. There's plenty of work to be done elsewhere when doing student media. So they had plenty of people to do the shoe leather journalism and plenty of us to move kind of in the other direction.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely where I lean is like try to just be as weird as possible. And but
Yeah,
while you know while being impactful, you know, back in
yeah.
the high school days, we had a TV production, like actually a class for TV production that we
Mhm.
actually put on a little show for everybody. And anytime I got a chance to do something on front of the camera, it would just be the most like the weirdest thing you could possibly see. I would just be finding like prop pieces and just making things happen in the background while I'm giving like just normal like regular news that anybody probably would want,
Yeah.
but incredibly distracting stuff. That's the kind of stuff I like
But
to do.
it's fun, and you're like, "You know what? Sure. Here's a thing I wouldn't have done otherwise with people I wouldn't have met or known otherwise who are now these, like, pillars of my life." Like, yeah, it's wild where that can take you. So I know exactly what you mean of, like, "Let me just do this thing and see what happens."
Yeah, it was. We were. And I will admit, especially back then, you're given a lot of creative freedom, especially because you're just a student, just making whatever. But anything you could do to make it kind of pierce through people's brains, I couldn't even imagine nowadays. I mean, I went to school back then. We didn't have a lot of
Yeah.
cell phones that were distracting. Anybody
Insane.
putting on a TV show, like a school-based TV show, I don't even know if anybody looks up from their phone anymore, right? Like,
No. I don't even know if the program I should ask. The program is the same of, like,
yeah,
when I went back a couple years ago and it was like, "No, we're really focused on analytics or, like, short form content or AI integration within content." Like, I don't
yeah.
know that they have a standard broadcast program the way they used to, not because that they aren't wonderful, but just because it looks different, as time and socie as it evolves. That's interesting for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's definitely I should reach I don't even think the teachers that I was working with even work there anymore. So I don't they probably have since scrapped that. But moving on, let's go to I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on
Yeah.
obviously you have a bunch of experiences and we'll touch on your career as we go through it. But has there been a point in your career and like I said, we'll get to what you've done here in a little bit. But is there a point in your career when you were just looking around the room, going like, "I can't believe I'm in this room. Like, what am I doing here?"
Yeah, definitely. I think the earliest and maybe most like, "Oh my god," would have been The Daily Show, and I think that was a mix of who you were in the room with, what you were preparing to do, the moment in time that I was there. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you want specifics now, but
Yeah,
definitely
go for it. Yeah.
moments where you're sort of like, "How did I moonwalk my way into this?" Um, so it would be in the writer's room as we're writing questions for, at the time, presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, and you'd be like, "This is
Mhm.
bizarre." Or you'd be, in when I was in the talent coordination world, prepping the green room so that J Lo had the right cappuccino. Like, it's just an insane sort
Yeah.
of thing that you're like, how did morning show Katie from 3 years ago, Elon University, end up teaching Bill Gates how to use a Keurig or like whatever the Daily Show threw you that week.
Yeah.
Definitely rooms like that, just coincidentally in circumstance, but then also, yeah, election nights, midterms, debate nights, any big sort of tent pole in the political world. We did a lot of looking around at each other, being like, "What is going on?" So great and refreshing, but also terrifying, and that never really goes away, I think. But it keeps you young, it keeps you
Yeah.
alert.
Absolutely. So I'm curious what that took from obviously you have a couple awesome like just your intern list alone of like where you interned is like really awesome. Like people would be like, "Wow, I could have interned at these places and then graduated and then moved on and like worked at a grocery store the rest of my life." And then just remember
Thank you.
like, "Oh my god, this is awesome." So you were at MTV for a little bit and then you did the Daily Show with Jon Stewart at the time,
I
right?
did.
You were there for a little bit and then he left had to be pretty close to about the time you were there, right?
He did. We were there the day he announced, and no one told the
Oh.
interns, nor should they, so that it wouldn't leak. And it went from a very standard day to a very somber day. And we were like, "Has something happened?" Like, we don't, didn't have the context. So then someone came up and told us, and we were like, "So do we still have job?" Like, you worry about the
Yeah.
immediate, and the
Yeah.
immediate is yes, he's going to slow roll out over however long. But also what's next, and nobody had any idea. And a lot of us had been trying to work in TV and comedy specifically and in this kind of world. And then to have sort of this titan of comedy generally, but also political. He kind of created this genre,
Yeah.
walk away from it, or he's come back since. But at the time, it was sort of like, oh, so now what? And who's going to fill these shoes? Are they? What does this mean for us on a much smaller level? It was a bizarre day for sure.
Yeah. So obviously that period didn't connect, right? So like your
Yeah.
internship didn't necessarily connect directly into your employment at the Daily
Mhm.
Show. How did you bridge that gap? Like what was it like leaving the internship not knowing kind of like what or
Yeah.
did you know what was next?
I was super annoying, honestly. I left and then I was like, "You will not forget who I am." And, like, not in a way where there was, like, a restraining order, but
Oh,
no,
well,
I did, whenever they had freelance opportunities, whenever they reached out to previous interns and in the pool and said, "Hey, we need help logging footage. We need someone to pick
mhm.
up props," like, just supplementary help. I was doing a couple freelance gigs at the time and would just prioritize if the Daily Show asked for something, I was like, "I'm down,"
Yeah.
to the point where it's like, "Does she live on her phone?" And so, yeah, I just tried to be super diligent in that and worked on a documentary. I worked, did the babysitting, dog walking thing, whatever it was to
Yeah.
pay rent in New York, all while just kind of waiting and knowing that eventually John would leave, Trevor would eventually assume his spot. And I was like, well, they're going to need to hire people. So I'll just keep at it. And then eventually, hopefully they'll remember me when it's time to hire. And they did. So fortunately, maybe a 6-month gap, not too drastic a gap, but at the time felt, like a lifetime, but which is laughable now.
Yeah, it's
21, you don't
time is
know.
crazy. Time is insane. It's wild to me that it's 2026 right now, and it just doesn't make any
Truly,
sense. Yeah, it's
truly.
crazy. I'm curious how I know you did an internship with the Jon Stewart portion of the show, and then you worked with the Trevor Noah portion of the show. How did those differ? How were those environment? How did those environments kind of feel
Yeah.
comparatively?
Yeah. Both awesome and wonderful in such different ways of like John's Daily Show by the time I was there had been around 15, 16 years. It was a
Mhm.
finally like he had that locked show was done by 6:30, home in Jersey, having dinner with his kids by 7. Like he had it down to a science. And so it felt like you were part of a big machine and there wasn't a ton of wiggle room, not in a negative way, but it was like, this is what we do. This is what we do well. Like, yeah, join us. And there wasn't a lot of flexibility in that. And then Trevor came in and was able to sort of pick pieces of it apart and say, like, what if we did this way? What if we were more flexible over here and more rigorous over here? What if, I think my understanding of it, not having been on the creative side under John, but both wonderful, but Trevor very democratic and like a good idea is a good idea. Wherever it comes from, like whoever brings it forward, let's hear it. Like if you got a joke, let's pitch it. Not to say that John wasn't necessarily, but
Yeah,
because he was so new, he was sort of like, yeah, let's crowdsource ideas and options and speak up and pitch and not as married to an established order and structure because I think he could afford to be. He could come in and say some of this feels stale, some of this feels isn't as conducive maybe to the operation I want to run. So both great, but one just I think maybe more flexible and creatively stimulating.
yeah. He's got a podcast now that I pop
Yeah.
into every once in a while when he brings a guest on that is not that everybody isn't interesting, but when it's interview podcasts, I kind of be a little more selective. But he's got an awesome podcast, and he's spoken about kind of following in that footstep and then trying to figure that out. So
Yeah.
that had to be an interesting dynamic for him to kind of be there, being like, how can I keep it the same but like be original while you guys are like trying to build it from the back end and be like, what do you want to do and how
Yeah.
you want to build that up? That had to be like a really weird time during that transition for sure.
Yeah, I think the earliest part, I was so junior. I was not part of any important conversations, but it was interesting to watch just generally. Sort of like, okay, at first I'm going to try this pretty closely to how John had it. And then, okay, let's try stand up today. Okay, what if we shot this part on a green screen? Like testing and playing with it and sort of acknowledging it can be a fluid, amorphous thing, I think was very cool and cool to watch as a young creative, just sort of happy to be there. Thrilled to be an intern under John, thrilled to be a full timer with Trevor. Watching that come to fruition over, I guess, my 4 or 5 years there, and in COVID, which is a different conversation,
Oh boy.
was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So yeah, obviously you had the ability to. You said you were new, you were fresh. So was he at the time, basically. What was it like being that new and then finding your place and then growing with the show as it progressed?
Yeah. I think for me, the best part was I started as an executive assistant to 3 executive producers. So wonderful exposure there. They were great to pull you into meetings, not just to take notes, but to just be a sponge.
Yeah.
And that was great, but felt like a starter job, right? It felt like, okay, I'm using this to springboard to something else. Was then in talent coordination, which was fun because you met all these different guests. You got to be in the trenches, sort of like all these different people and personalities and moments. And that was fun. But it wasn't until I got to the writer's room, wasn't until I got to sort of the creative nitty gritty that I was like, oh, this is where I need to be. So I was growing with the show as the show grew, but I was also trying to like poke around and see what really made a lot of sense and what felt right. And being the writer's assistant and in the writer's room just felt like an exhale. It sort
Yeah.
of felt like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. I didn't know what it was, but then once I kind of landed there, I was like, oh, this is what was sort of calling to you that you didn't know. So grew with the show, but also grew in figuring out what I enjoyed and the kind of people I wanted to really dig in with, and had a blast, honestly.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Conan O'Brien is like one of my biggest, like, here. I love that guy. Everything he puts out, I try to take it all in. He's
Yeah,
awesome. And
yeah,
just him being a writer and like talking about writers' rooms, especially in SNL. How I know SNL is obviously a different story, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's a political comedy show, right? So like there's some serious stuff. What is a writer's room like after like something serious?
yeah,
How are you sitting there trying to be like, all right, how can we walk this line
yeah.
of being funny, but also like we need to deliver something?
Yeah, and I started in 2016, which is an odd, just a different, very definitive chapter of sort of figuring out how to navigate a lot of that. And
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, you're there to be funny. You're there to say something and to resonate with people in some way. And it's like, we're not journalists. We don't want to take ourselves so seriously or have an inflated sense of what we're here to do. How do you make people feel better about a thing when sometimes there isn't like after say a shooting or something that
Yeah,
unfortunately is super common in the US, there's nothing funny. Like there's nothing funny about that. So you either go after, a certain talking point, or you go after legislation. You find something else around that incident to
yeah,
talk at. Or some days you would just kind of go in the writer's room and be like, nothing. There's nothing here. We're going to address it very somberly, and then we're going to move on with a completely unrelated field piece. Like, I think when to tap out. So I
yeah.
think it's a long-winded way of saying you either make it about something tangential that is still in the same kind of vein of conversation, or you just sort of sit it out entirely for fear of handling it incorrectly,
Yeah.
or poking, somewhere we don't need to be as a comedy show.
Yeah. So I would like to think that I would thrive in that environment. Like I just feel like I'm kind of like, again, I go back to time in radio. We would have a lot of these like
Good.
brainstorming meetings where we just get around a table and just throw things at the wall.
Yeah,
I'm like a tier one throw things at the wall guy. Like
I love that.
I
Yeah,
can just spew a bunch of stuff, and like 99% of it is like a giggle and a move on kind of thing.
okay.
But every once in a while we'll stick something and I'll be like, I'm so proud of that. Was there
Yeah,
something that you throughout that was like, man, I don't know if this is it. I'm just gonna wing it. And then
yeah.
they wound up running with it.
Yeah, a couple times, and especially as a writer's assistant, you're in the middle of the room because you have to be able to hear ideas from 360 around you, and you're on a laptop, and you're sort of locked in, and you're having to get everything that's said. So you don't have a ton of opportunities for that, but occasionally when there is a moment and something really hits, and I even remember the context of what it was, but in the whole room laughs or loses
Yeah.
it,
Oh, that's
and there are
awesome.
these people that you love and respect who are so smart and so funny, and if you are able to do that, that is a high I will
Yeah.
chase my entire life. And
Yeah.
honestly, probably never like it is one of the coolest, best things. And to your point, yeah, you have to go through a lot of like, well, she tried to
Yeah.
get to that one just like kill. But
Yeah.
when you do, yeah, we also used to be able to submit pieces and ideas via email for like a pitch. It was like an email inbox. And every once in a while you'd pitch one and have people come to your desk to be like, hell yes. Like that's what I'm talking about. And like I still have those printed out,
Oh yeah.
because it meant a lot, because it was
Yeah.
people that are the reason that I got into the game being like, don't stop doing that. That is really special and cool. And that meant a lot to me. Still does.
That's awesome. Yeah, and obviously you got to take that with you. Like you said, having like-minded people around, especially in that industry, being in one room together and then just like cracking somebody up. I feel like that's like such a win. That's huge.
It's
I
so
feel like
fun. And
yeah.
I think to riff, that's why COVID was so tough, to be
Yeah.
in a room with people and riffing on something where, especially a clip based show like The Daily Show, where they'll play you a segment of something, pause it, and then it's sort of like, all right, room, what do you got? That is so freeing because sometimes it's stream of consciousness. Sometimes someone says something and you add to it, or they say something dumb and you dunk on it, but then it becomes the impetus for a larger conversation or joke run. It's a blast. It's so much better as a group than writing by yourself.
Yeah, no doubt. That's so cool that you went that you're able to go through that and have those memories. That's so awesome.
Thank
Now
you.
let's talk about it because I know that this is like you mentioned it as well. COVID during that time, like the entire world stopped, right? So like everything kind of stopped. What did that look like for you, where you were at, and how were the pieces put back together to start going back at it again?
Yeah. So I actually left during COVID. So I never returned
Oh,
to the studio
okay.
post, which is wild. But yeah, I think the toughest piece creatively was like a writer's room just it shouldn't be a Google Doc. And so we tried
Yeah.
Zoom calls for a bit and like with delay and people talking over each other and so much of comedy being rhythm and delivery and cadence.
Hmm.
I think that's just a lot of it's lost until we figured it out later in COVID. But early days, it was sort of brutal. So it was just a long running Google Doc, and we would post stories or jokes or ideas, and then be like, riff on this, and then people would go and in a Google Doc, sort of live on top of each other, right? And it just wasn't conducive to comedy. It was tough. That was a
It's like a
tough.
Reddit thread, right? Like somebody
Yeah,
just throws a post up and is like, "Let's just keep going." That definitely doesn't feel the
yeah.
same, right? Yeah,
And it's also
that's
while people are processing what's going on and everything happening and trying to be funny in a doc without the camaraderie of your friends and peers, without a Zoom call to sort of bring us together because it doesn't
yeah,
make as much sense. So I did go in for the 2020 election night, and then it
yeah.
was like 6 of us were in the building plus the crew. We were all in
Wow.
masks, and we all sat I have a weird photo of it. We all sat very far apart and wrote a fully remote show, and then just sat there, the 6 like, literally 6 to 10 of us maybe, and watched as the show went live, with, like, a skeleton crew, and bizarre. Bizarre,
Yeah,
but also, you know what? Sure. Like,
yeah, right.
what a life experience. You're like, "Might as well." But yeah, I felt it was cool to be included in that for sure.
So was that like the big kick for you to kind of go into like, oh, this is like maybe we can do this remotely? Like how are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you producing and doing all this stuff kind of from a remote? I mean, obviously you still can go on site for a lot of the things that you're doing, but
Mhm.
you still have to find a way to direct it wherever you are. How did that was that kind of like the catalyst that kind of said maybe this is something that's possible somewhere else?
Yeah. Oh, in terms of moving? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, and I think I probably hit my ceiling of where I was gonna move and grow and move
Hmm.
up at the show, and was ready to sort of the next thing, and was like,
Yeah.
all good. If I'm not gonna do it here, I do need to sort of keep moving, and I think tech was very much the next not the next thing, it was already a thing, but kind of the next horizon where I could bring some of that skill set to what at the time was also a remote show and like informational, educational content, sort of instructional videos. Again, fully remote, same deal. Maybe we had one person in a studio 23, 2024. But yeah, I think that definitely showed you, oh, this could be all kinds of stuff. And TikTok took off in a whole different way, in terms of producing not for broadcast. So yeah, I think COVID was absolutely a catalyst for that. I think is my more
Yeah.
truncated answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. So, admittedly, TikTok was something that when it first started, and again, I worked in radio, so like we were worried about audio. We were putting out a post show podcast. We were making clips and doing like lives on Facebook, right? So it was like a classic hit station. So we were like heavy on the Facebook because we had like 50 plus. It was like our market,
Funny. Yeah.
but we wanted to have short form content. We wanted to do fun stuff. So we were trying to find ways to integrate TikTok, but it was like I remember those early days of TikTok, and then like the higher ups would come down and be like, "We got to do this. We got to do this TikTok
Yeah.
thing."
The
And
kids
everyone's
were
like,
doing it. Yeah,
"What are
yeah.
you talking about?" Like I don't know. I felt a little bit of an early resistance to that because I was like, "I don't know, man. This feels a little weird. Everything felt a little phony." How did that? I mean, how did that integrate into your life? Obviously, you started working and doing this before TikTok came around. I feel
Mhm.
like TikTok has shifted everybody's brain nowadays is kind of yeah, the attention
Feels
span is shortened about by 1,000,000%.
yeah.
And how did that kind of affect the way you were kind of producing content?
Yeah. I think, at the time, there's always a little bit of hesitancy and resistance. To your point, what is this? What is this thing? TikTok specifically was always like the dancing, lip syncing app. Like, I think it got
Yeah,
pigeonholed into this thing. So it was like, who's going to do incisive comedy on this? Like, who's going
yeah.
to? And then I think such funny, talented creators came out of the platform that
Mhm.
it was like, oh, we need to take this seriously. One, because they're going to replace us. Two, because they can enhance and make all of our stuff better. But we also need to make sure that they have, a platform and a voice and can, be incorporated into our content. I think since then, Daily Show and Wix as well, both places, have hired creators straight out of creator pools. They're like, we're not going to audition people. We're going to find people who organically blew up and grew an audience and tap into that. And I think every workplace I've had since then has done that as well.
Yeah, I think I mean, when I worked in, again, I'm going to keep going back to radio, but that was kind of like one of the points of me being like, all right, I think I've kind of peaked as well in this building, and I don't think I want to. Maybe I want to try some other things. It was still early. It was like a little bit right before 2020 happened. So, but there was like a push where it was like the best way to to get an opportunity here is to
Mhm.
grow sideways. That was what they would say, was be like, grow
Yeah.
sideways as a creator. Go out and basically get famous, like do viral stuff, and then we'll come back and pay you. So
Mhm.
that was kind of like a weird dynamic where we were like putting on like great content. We were like Marconi Award nominated. Like we were putting out really
Cool.
cool content and stuff. And everybody
Yeah.
was like, but what's your socials? And we're like, damn. All right. So outside
Yeah.
of Facebook, we had room to grow. So that was kind of where it kicked. And we were like, all right, let's start putting some content out. And then we just wound up rolling from there. But yeah, that was such a weird time. I just remember that. And I was like, TikTok now is awesome. Like I'll take clips from this podcast and anything that I create and throw it out. Now it kind of feels like you create the content and you can send it out to almost anybody. Everybody's got a TikTok now. So like Instagram,
Yeah.
YouTube, everybody's got it now, which is crazy that it was adapted so widely across all these platforms. So it definitely did change the way, the way I put out content, the way I promote the content. I remember when I first started doing podcasts, I would put out like audiograms, right? Like I'd be like,
Yeah.
here's my little waveform and some words. And I thought that was like high quality content at the time. And
Funny.
that's
I mean,
not the
hey,
case
it's
anymore.
all a pipeline, like, it's all building on,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a foundation that you've built on. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it definitely was a weird time for sure. So you have on your resumes a little bit of Sesame Street, all right? And now I think just about everybody on the planet knows about Sesame Street. I don't think you can grow up in the United States of America and not have come across Big Bird or Sesame Street at any point.
Mhm.
I got to know what was going on there. What were you doing with Sesame Street? I'm
Yeah, it is.
genuinely curious because it's awesome.
Thank you, thank you. It was a wild, like, couple months, if that, freelance gig. They
Mhm.
opened up to the public or creators and writers the ability to write digital content for, I think it was specifically Elmo and Cookie Monster,
Nice.
and maybe some Grover. And, yeah, it was like short form digital bits, some like very, very short form, like meme captions, things that were very, very brief.
Yeah.
Um, some dialogue, some interactions between characters, and it was in, I think it was like summer of 2020, and it was based around COVID of like, okay, kids are dealing with and processing being home.
Yeah.
Not to keep talking about COVID, but
No, no. I mean, listen, it's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
it was part of the, yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
we want to sort of freshen up or kind of change what we're doing here, and are looking for different voices. And you were asked to submit all these like options and jokes and pitches to them, and then they would pick from that list, of how to sort of help kids process and, acknowledge being, I don't say trapped, but being at home and like
Well,
school
yeah.
from home, and
Yeah.
how to make the best out of a thing that none of us understood or understand. Um, and so, yeah, it was a blast. It was fully remote. I worked with like one person. It was like very, very kind of, brief, and but it meant so much to me because I think that is, to your point,
Yeah.
one of those things where everybody knows it. You grew up knowing it, and even to get a couple jokes on, you're like, "Yeah, I'll ride that high forever." Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
no doubt.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and I think too, like, that was, I was still at The Daily Show at the time. I think that, to your earlier point, also sort of showed me, oh, there is a lot of creative stuff out here. There's a lot more I could be doing. I think that was also a push out the door, that and the remote work, because it was like, there's a big world out there, and I've spent 5 years at this one place, but, like, I think I wanna see what else there is, and what better way to sort of push you along than Elmo.
That's yeah, no doubt. Oh my gosh, yeah, it would help you do anything, I think, right? It's pretty much
Right.
taught me, and he's teaching my kids how to do a bunch of stuff.
I
It's
love
great.
that. Yeah.
But
No, the
yeah, so how long you've been in New York City for how long, or how long have you been up there?
decade. I
A
just hit a
decade. Oh, so
decade.
it's been that full 10 years. You've just been grinding up there.
Oh, yeah. I do
That's
have
awesome.
moments of, like, yeah, I mean, you've had, some kind of full-time job since what, like 16, 17, and you're
That's
sorta like,
huge.
"Maybe I'll just go to an island for a bit," but not yet, not yet. But yeah, the full 10 years of grinding, and, have really truly loved it, and I'm always kind of excited and think about what's next.
I've know people who live up there. I've had some friends. My wife has one of her best friends that lives up there as well.
Yeah.
That's such a to me an interesting. We've stayed up there for maybe 4 days total, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know how people do this every day. And I know right now is a bad time to have this conversation because you just told me before we started that you're in 2 feet of snow right now.
A lot.
But
Yeah.
aside from the snow, just that life, that city life. Like I've been there a few times
Yeah.
just walking around and it is really cool, but it's like, it's super overwhelming. It's like there's a lot going on. And if you don't know what's going on, I'm assuming after 10 years, you've probably got it down. But yeah, what was that like kind of adjusting up
To
there
it.
and then trying to find opportunities to make it work?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think at the time, so I moved up, yeah, at the time, most opportunities in this industry were New York, LA, DC. Now
Mhm.
it's much more, it's a different landscape. But at the time it was like, well, pick one.
Yeah.
And I'm from Virginia and loved the city, interned up here. And I was like, well, of course I'm moving to New York. Like there was never really a thought of doing anything else. Um, and yeah, lived in Hell's Kitchen over where all the TV studios are when I was at the show. Could walk to work, but
Oh,
it's a
that's
couple
awesome.
blocks from Times Square. And I go back there now and I was like, what was I thinking? And it was like, well, you were thinking cheap rent and
Yeah.
you're gonna need to have a subway pass. But um it's a lot, I've lived in Upper East and West, so that got a little more residential. Now I'm in Brooklyn, which is kind of much more residential and much more, kind of a slower pace of life in the best way. But yeah, you certainly have moments of like, I didn't think you'd blink and still be here 10 years in, but have loved doing it and have loved the broadcast kind of production pieces of it as well. And I could be on set and do things here I couldn't do elsewhere, whether it was like Times Square New Year's Eve or Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Like, I don't know if one day justifies, a year of living here, but it's definitely given me opportunities. If you had told freshman in college Katie she'd be doing, she'd be over the moon. So yeah, it's been wild, but it is a lot. You're absolutely right. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. My wife is from Long Island, right? So she
Yeah.
we go up there every once in a while, but every time we go up there, we're like, let's go to the city and check it out. And we've done the full like in one day she did like an itinerary of like all the touristy stuff. We went in the Statue of Liberty. We went to
Oh,
the
yeah.
Museum of Natural History, which is like I wish we had more time in there because that place was way bigger than I thought it was.
So fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we did Central Park. We did it all and like we went through everything, the Empire State Building, literally everything. It was crazy. And we wound up just I feel like we checked all the boxes. So I could feel like, yeah, I went to New York, but I don't think I've like actually experienced it, especially not the same way that you have.
Totally.
I know that you mentioned when we chatted before that you have done a lot of like just random budget traveling. Is that
Yeah.
easier to do out of New York City when there's like three large airports or like two or three large
Totally.
airports that you can just kind of like see what's next and head out? How does that
Yep.
work for you?
Totally. A bit of an obsession. I think it is, yes, proximity to those airports, being able to hop on a train and be at those, not
Mhm,
doing expensive Ubers each way. If you see a deal or there is something super affordable, the ability to be like, all right, do we want to go there this weekend? Because we live right here. Most of these are direct,
mhm.
nonstop flights. Like the logistics of it definitely easier. But yeah, I think that's definitely fostered the love of that. And I'm a little spoiled in how easy it is to get places. And yeah, it's a bit of an addiction to be like, all right, where can I go? How affordably can I do it? And yeah, I have a bit of a reputation with the friends of like, yep, and she's restless again. But yeah, it's been awesome.
No, that's really cool. I know growing up, I've always had this like dream and you see it in like early 90s movies. So you'd see where like people would just go to the airport and then just get a ticket and
Yep.
go. I don't know if
Oh,
that's
yeah.
happening a lot nowadays where you just show up to the airport and say,
Yeah.
what's leaving next? I don't know if that's
Yeah.
happening as much, but have you done
Cool
something
vibe.
like that?
Not quite like that, but I
Okay.
did recently with all the snow, a friend was like, "Where are we going and when?"
Yeah.
So we're flying somewhere this weekend because it's like just not to be here.
Yeah.
So it's not quite day of, but with work, I have been told in the morning I'm leaving in the afternoon or night and have booked something, and it's, yup, I guess I'll get on the road.
Wow. Yeah.
But personal travel, we'll do a little more planning on the front end.
Fun.
But yeah, I'm definitely like a logistics kind of miles gal in a way that I'm like, all right, how much can I get this for? But it's been fun. I don't know if that's a hobby or just sad, but I
No,
do I do
that's
enjoy it.
that I don't think that's sad at all. So I think it's awesome. Like that's really that's something that I think a lot of people would love to just be able to do and say like on a whim, I want to go this weekend. Let's go check out what's going on in Paducah. Like I don't know what that looks
Exactly.
like, but maybe there's a round trip flight. What would
Yeah.
you say are what are some really cool places that you went to that surprised you maybe? Maybe initially you were like, do I really want to go here?
Yeah.
And then you went there and were like, wait a minute, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. A friend and I, this will date me. got a Groupon
Hey,
to go to like a resort in Nicaragua, but it was largely in the trees and like tree houses overlooking a beach, which was very
wow.
cool. So it was very much like a couples trip that we did as two platonic friends. But I book a lot of those. But it was great. And it was like, sure, like here's something I know very little about. That was within range and it was an adventure and a blast. Um Recently went to just outside of Montreal and did sort of like the dog sledding loop, just things where you're like between that and the Northern Lights, and now it's unfathomable to be in an Arctic setup,
Yeah.
but anything that has, I think, an activity associated with it or tied to it will always sort of catch my eye. And I think TikTok has been rough for that because that algorithm feeds
Oh,
you volcanoes to climb and you're like, damn
yeah.
it, yes, I got to climb the volcano. So I think that's yeah, definitely a bit of a byproduct of that. But yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, the algorithms are incredibly scary. And it's like you can think about something and it'd be
Yep.
like, yeah, you're going to do this. I'm going to make
Yep.
sure that I'm going to feed you everything that I need to feed you to make you feel like you need to do this. Like that
Yeah.
is a weird system that I don't not to say we've created, but the internet
It's
is
been
a
pushed
scary place
upon us.
sometimes. Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very odd. Katie, this has been awesome. I appreciate you making the time to
Of
come on here.
course.
One more question, and this
Yeah.
is I've kind of been asking people this because I think it's kind of fun to do. But let's go beyond 10 years because we talked a lot about your last 10 years.
Ah,
Let's go like high school, maybe freshman, sophomore, Katie. Let's say you go back in time, right?
scary.
You
Yep.
right now go back in time and you get to tell freshman in high school, Katie, one
Yeah.
cool thing about what you've done in your life that they wouldn't believe. Like tell them something that
Oh,
would
interesting.
blow their mind at that time. What would you tell her?
Yeah, one, like, event, like, very specific experience or more just kind of, like, the general sentiment of, like, you made it, you did the things that like, what
Yeah, I guess
stretch
that's
me a
it.
little
Yeah,
bit.
you can. I know I'm speaking specific, but yeah, you can definitely talk about like, yeah, you get like to tell them one thing, and it
Yeah.
could be like about like something you did, or like you crushed it, or like you're gonna be fine. Like
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
a lot of people would go back and be like, buy Bitcoin. But no,
So,
we're not. Yeah, we're
what I
not
would
talking
give.
like that.
Totally, yeah,
But
yeah.
professionally, it's something that they'd be really like shocked and proud that that
Yeah.
you did.
I think she would be shocked and proud at the scope of all the variety, I think, of what I'd done, and I think I would tell her to just keep saying yes to stuff. It might seem sort of odd, it might seem out of your depth or out of the scope of what you're doing or trying to build and create, but I would encourage her and anybody to just truly be like, "Yes, sure, why not?" Like, "Yes, I'll work on this thing that seems a little odd. Yes, I'll take on this project that's a little out of left field." And then just that she would be shocked, I think, 10 years on, how much more she had kind of accomplished than she ever would have thought or imagined by putting yourself out there and not feeling like, nope, I'm a comedian and I do this one thing and this is what I'm going to do forever. And so, not very succinct answer, but I think it's continue to say yes, even if it makes you uncomfortable. I think the best stuff comes out of that kind of uncomfy space. I sometimes think about what I would want. I'm 33. I think about what I want 43-year-old Katie to look back. Like I'm trying to live that life now so
Yeah,
that I can kind of bridge that gap. And it's funny you ask that because I don't think look back often. And I think it's a cool question because I don't really marinate in, I guess, all that I've done outside of that LinkedIn post. And I think
incredible stuff, by the
we
way.
should do
Just
more of
elite
it.
content. Oh my god, I loved it. It was beautiful.
Thank
Yeah, we
you.
need more of
Thank
that. And yeah, I feel like that's something that I don't do either. Like I make a bunch of content, but I don't know when or what to post it on LinkedIn. Like I'm like, I'm over here trying to have fun. I'm just messing around with people, and like we're having some
you.
good
Yeah.
conversation, obviously. And with this, I mean, career related stuff. I guess that would be the way to go. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like LinkedIn is like a place where I'm connected with a lot of people, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily more like your post stood out because it wasn't,
Thank you.
here's 10 things I learned about how to make $1 million.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I appreciate that, and I think I had one way back, that it was sort of similar. It was just on kind of a brain dump, and it was like, just be weird and different and say yes to sort of what I'm saying now, and it's funny who reaches out and who you hear from. That's like, I needed to hear that because I'm trying to get out of X and get into Y.
yeah.
So maybe I don't know if the answer is do more of it or do about the same amount, but just super vulnerable, which is it's hard to do, but maybe being more vulnerable on LinkedIn's a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt for sure. And have you seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? That's like that
Way
your
back
response
when.
reminded me of like,
Yeah.
yes, that movie where he just had to say yes to everything.
Yep.
And maybe not every single thing. Like there's got to be a line,
Sure.
obviously.
Sure.
But yes. Yeah, that's great advice and just put yourself out there. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on. This has been
Thank
awesome.
you. I
And
appreciate it.
I'll see you. I'll see you at work.
That sounds good. Yeah, here in just a little bit. We don't get a snow day, darn it.
Oh yeah, no, it's tough. It's one thing about remote. Yeah, you're definitely like, well, you got internet, right?
Yeah,
You
I was
gotta
in,
you
like,
gotta log in.
glorified pajamas all day. I was like, "This is what you guys get." Like, this is
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
fun.
that's the best part for sure. But awesome. All right, well, you go get warm, go relax, and try not to book any flights tonight. Just relax and
I'll
keep it
do
cool.
my best. I can't promise that.
Awesome.